Perhaps the most important part of creating an embroidery design is the optimization, but it's also the most overlooked because the process is somewhat daunting here in InkStitch. Now, other programs have some automated features that make the process a lot easier, but here in InkStitch, it's more of a manual process, but it's really, really important to think about how the embroidery file is going to stitch so we can minimize the number of thread trims and minimize the number of thread jumps. Okay, so the more you practice, the more it will kind of come to you naturally. So let's just think about how we're going to stitch our little bee out. And the way I'm thinking is we're going to start here with our heart shape and we're going to go in this direction. Okay, and then we're going to stitch our tail, and then we're going to come all the way up here, all the way around, and we're going to stitch the antenna, and then we're going to stitch this piece of satin, and then we're going to come down and stitch this piece of satin, and then we're going to probably, I think we're going to go in and stitch this like so, come back, and then we're going to finish off with that, and then we're going to jump over to the eye, to the mouth, to the eye. So that's kind of my thought process. But how in the world are we going to get there to do that? So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So let me show you what we're going to do. Let's go to our design here. And the first thing that we need to do is we're just going to start by the heart. Okay? We decided that this is where we're starting, is our heart. So we're going to select a shape and then hold our shift key down and select the shapes in the order that we want them to stitch. So we're going to select them in this order. Come around. All the way around. We have to select them kind of bit by bit like we're doing for this to work. Okay? And if we move them, you can see we do have them all selected. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose Extensions, InkStitch, Edit. We're going to restack the objects in the order that they were selected. And the reason we have to do it that way is because these stitch in the order in which they are in the layers palette here. Okay? So the bottom is going to stitch first. So the bottommost objects are these two pieces, right? And this piece, the yellow fill. Now this yellow fill, that is path number 5. Let's call this yellow fill. Okay. And then let's call this piece left wing. Yellow fill. And then we'll call this right wing. Okay. So let's start right here maybe. Let's look at these two pieces and see how they are going to stitch. So we're going to go into simulator mode. We're using my keyboard shortcut of Control-Alt-S is my simulator mode. So you can see the end down here and then start right there at the closest connection point. So that's convenient. So we don't have to modify those at all. Now if you want to get into simulation mode without a keyboard shortcut, you go to Extensions, InkStitch, Visualize and Export, and then get to Simulator that way. So the yellow's fine. There's only one piece of yellow. And then the next piece to stitch is that bottom piece of our heart. And then it's going to come around after our heart, which this last one is path 56. So our tail is going to stitch next. So that's path 42, and we need to be that right after path 56. So it's going to go from the last piece of our heart to our tail. Okay? So then we have to pick all of the rest of the pieces in the order. Let's turn off fill areas for the time being. So we have to pick the rest of our satin pieces in the order that we want them to stitch. So I'm going to say our tail, and then we're going to come up here and pick up this antenna. Then we're going to pick up this antenna. And then we are going to pick up this satin stitch, and then this satin stitch, and then we are going to pick up this satin border. So you see that side of the satin border. And then we're going to come to the center part of our satin border. And then we're going to come to this side of our satin border. Let's move all that. You see all that's coming along? And then when that's done, then we're going to do the outer ring of the bee. So you see that there. And then once that's done, we're going to do the left eye, the mouth, and then the right eye. So that's all selected in the proper order, but now we're going to come up here to extensions, and we're going to choose InkStitch, and we are going to choose edit, and then we are going to restack all that in the order of my selection. Excellent. Okay, so we're going to do the last piece of our heart, we're going to do our tail, and then from the tail, we're going to go where? We're going to go to this top antenna. So the first thing we need to do is determine how is the tail stitching. We need to stitch from left to right. And it is stitching right to left. So we're going to swap those rails, and now it's stitching in the proper order. Now from there, we're going to go to this antenna, and that needs to stitch from the top down. It currently stitches from the bottom up, so we're going to swap those rails. Then it needs to go to this antenna, which also needs to stitch from the top down. So, stitching from the bottom up, so we'll make that stitch from the top down. So that takes care of that. So then the next piece is this piece, and it needs to stitch from the top down. And it is stitching from the bottom up. So we're going to swap those rails. Then this next piece needs to stitch from the bottom up. And it does stitch from the bottom up. Excellent. So that takes us up to this next piece. So the next piece that we decided we were going to stitch was this piece. That needs to stitch from the bottom up. And it stitches from the top down. So we're going to swap those rails to stitch it from the bottom up. Then the next piece to stitch is this center piece. And it's stitching from the bottom up. I think I'm going to change that. Okay, so right now we are stitching 39, we are stitching 44, and then 47. We're going to stitch 47 first. So when this satin stitch finishes, it's going to stitch this. And this we want to stitch from the bottom up now. So let's see if it's stitching from the bottom up. It is. So then it's going to go right into this piece, which is going to stitch from the top down. And it's not. So we're going to undo swap rails, and now it's stitching from the top down. And then it's going to go right into this piece. So when this finishes, this is going to begin. So we are going to go and stitch from the top down. There we go, stitching from the top down. And then, so once this piece is done, then this piece goes, and then finally this piece, and this piece. Excellent. So everything is stitching in the proper order, and everything is in the proper layer stack to stitch out in the most optimum way. Now, all we have to do is connect all the dots. So this is the tricky part, okay? So this piece is going to stitch, and then this piece. So what we need to do is go to Extensions, InkStitch. We're going to come down here to Tool Stroke, and we're going to choose this option, Jump Stitch to Stroke. And you see the keyboard shortcut is Control-Alt-J. So we're going to click on that. And what this is going to do is anything that is not shorter than 2 millimeters, it's going to add a jump stitch. Okay? And we'll choose all those options and hit apply. And then we'll go ahead and hit close. Now, there's our jump stitch. So what we're going to do now is set the width of that jump stitch. I like 0.2. And all we have to do is add some nodes to this so we can hide the jump stitch underneath the finished embroidery. This is what they call pathing. This is very common. You'll see this in commercial embroidery designs. To be able to get from one spot to another, we have to have these connection lines. And we hide them under finished embroidery. And the reason we do that is so our machine never slows down. We don't have to have a thread jump. We can just go right on sailing along here. So what I'm going to do is just add little line segments, tuck it underneath this satin border, and that will get us from that piece all the way back up top to be able to stitch this in the order that we want to stitch it. So right now I'm just tucking all of those run stitches underneath what will ultimately become my satin border. See? There we go. So it's going to finish that and then run stitch all the way up to the top, right? And then it's going to satin down, and then it's going to come over here. So what we need to determine is from here to here, we need a jump. And we know that we need a jump. Control-Alt-J is my keyboard shortcut, because we're coming from the bottom of this all the way up to the top of that. See there? So again, we're going to grab that jump stitch. We're going to make it 0.2, and then we're just going to add some nodes to the jump stitch, like so, so we can hide it underneath our finished embroidery. Now I do like to bring it back a little bit instead of going right to the tip. Same thing on this one. I do like to bring it back just a little bit instead of right at the tip. Okay, I already moved that one in. So then this comes down, And then where this piece ends, this one begins, and it's so short that we do not need a jump stitch there. But let's just double check it. So we select that piece, shift click this piece, Alt Control J. We should not need a jump stitch here. If we don't need a jump stitch, it just won't create one. Now it technically said that we did. Okay, so we can leave it or we could not leave it. In my case, I guess we will just go ahead and run with it, but it's a pretty short distance there. So then this is going to come along, and this is going to finish down here at the bottom, and we will need a jump stitch now from where this piece finishes. What's going on here? So where this piece finishes, oh, let's see here. What's going on? Won't let me select that for some reason. What's going on here? Won't let me select any of that. Did I accidentally lock it? I must have. I don't know how I would have done that, but I accidentally locked a layer. So at any rate, this piece is next, and then this piece. So it is going to need a jump stitch, because that's a pretty far distance. And you can see that there, that jump stitch was generated. So now we'll go back over here and do 0.2 again. And like I say, when I do these jump stitches, I like to just pull it away just a little bit, and then we'll tuck it. Tuck it right there. Tuck it right there. We'll bring this down in here and tuck it right there. Okay, so it goes from there to there, and it's going to come all the way up here. And then the next thing it's going to connect to, remember we had it set to that center column piece. So let's just see if we need a jump stitch from there. It's a very short distance. We do not. So we do not need a distance from where this ends to where the next one begins. There's no jump stitch. There's no jump stitch here because that ends and begins the same position. And then there's no jump stitch between this one and this one, but there is. Now, this is where things get a little bit different here, because this piece from here to here, there will be a jump stitch. So let's go ahead and add it. Okay, and the reason that there's a jump stitch is because it's ending down here, but it's starting up here. So let's go ahead and show you how that's going to work. But this is a little bit different. So it needs to come all the way, like all the way down and through here, right? So we're going to just bring this down here. And we need to add some additional segments here. Like so. All the way up to the top. Just like so. We're just double clicking to add a control point or a node. And we're going to go like that all the way around. Okay, but this is where things get a little bit different. This piece currently ends way down here at the bottom. And we can't have that because we need to connect right here at this point right up here. Okay, so that's where it becomes a problem. Now, nope, either way, that's just how it's got to be. So what we're going to do here is something a little bit different. We're going to cut it right here. So we're just going to add a couple of nodes. Shift click on this one. We're going to cut it right there. Boom. Cut. Okay. And then remember To break it apart, Shift Control K. And so these two bottom pieces are now separate from the top. So we're going to combine those together, and then we're going to combine these two together. Okay, now let's look at our layers palette and see exactly how this is stitching. So we have the path that goes all the way up top here, and then, so that's path 86, and then we need this piece, which is right up here. That's 87. Okay, so there's our run stitch all the way to the top, and there's our satin stitch coming back down. Now right now that is not satin, so let's go ahead and add some params to that. Because we broke it apart and recombined it and all that monkey business, it's no longer satin. And it's no longer stitching from top down. And so now it is going in the right direction. Okay, so that's taken care of. But then our next piece should be, so it goes 86, 87, and then it should be this little piece right here. And it is, okay? So, but where this ends and this begins, we do need a jump stitch between the two. Okay, and you'll see why. Now, we didn't get one, and that's because we didn't set the params for this. We have to set the params for this first, and I forgot to do that. Okay, so it's not letting us turn it into satin. Why? Why is that piece not letting us turn it into satin? Because it's not combined. Now it's combined. Now let's turn it into satin. We want to make sure it's stitching from right to left, first of all, which it looks like it is. So we'll turn off run stitch. Now we got a satin column, and it is going right to left. So that's good. So now when we select this outside piece and this inside piece and do that jump stitch, now it will go ahead and create it for us. So there's that jump stitch that's been created. Let's go to point 2. Right, just like the others. And then let's modify our jump stitch a little bit here. So we're going to bring that in. We're going to bring it in over here. And just click, 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 something like that. And then where that comes back, where this piece ends, this piece will then begin. So that's how it should be. So this piece ending 46 and this piece beginning 39, coming around, and then this piece 11, 12, and 13. Okay, that wasn't too terribly bad, was it? So now let's take a look at how this is stitching, because I do not believe these are stitching in the right order. Or they're in the right order, but not the right direction. So let's go ahead and take a look at those params and just double check that. And they are not. So all we got to do is swap those rails. And then you can see they are all stitching. Half of them are stitching in the right order. Half of them are not. But no worries. We'll fix it. So these right here and that one and that one and that one, right? Those need different params. So we swap the rails on those. We do need to swap the rails on these. All right, so now if we look at the whole thing together, let's watch it and see if it stitches out in the order that we need it to. So let's just pause it. You can see here, we back it up. It's stitching the heart, it's stitching, beautiful. It's stitching our tail. Now, we don't see the running stitch because I guess we're in params. So let's close that out. Let's go into simulator mode because then we can see the running stitch that we created. Let's go ahead and pause this again. So you can see, oh, we got a little guy here that we need to fix. So we'll fix that, but that's okay. That's why we do this. So you can see that run stitch coming all the way to the top. The run stitch coming to the top, right? The little jump to the first satin. The run stitch down to the next satin. Little jump to the center. Our heart, a little run stitch all the way up to the top. Come back around in town. Come back up and through. Come around, come around, come around. Boom, boom, and boom. Okay? Now, let's back up a moment. And let's take a look at what's happening right here. You see that right there? Why is that happening? That should not be happening. Now, there's good reason for that. So you see here, this run stitch. Actually, it's this one right here. Okay? So it's ending, and then it's starting. But why do we see that weird jump there? Well, let's go into params, and I'll try and explain what's happening. Instead of this running stitch, what we need is we need to change it to a manual stitch. And watch this right here. So when I switch to manual stitch, watch what happens right there. See how that's totally different? And the reason for that is because when it was set to running stitch, there was a set stitch length. Okay? So because those two other stitches, those two other points, were less than 2.5 millimeters, it just went from point A to point B. Okay? So we have to set that to manual stitch, and now we won't get that. Okay? Now, I don't remember exactly which one was giving us a problem. It was probably this one, I think. None of the rest of them are like that. So I think that was the one that was giving us a little bit of a hiccup. So let's try that again, back in simulator mode. Okay, I'm using my keyboard shortcut, Control-Alt-S. So you can see our satin is good. Nope, it was on the inside right here, this guy, the second one in on the left side of the heart. So we'll fix that. But notice now, because we changed that to a manual stitch, we don't see that line in between the two antennas. All right, so that all is going to work just fine. So I'm happy with all that except that right there. So let's go ahead and fix that. What's wrong up here? So there's an extra node here. See that extra node? That's what was happening. Throwing that off. Okay? Pretty simple little thing, but that happens a lot with nodes on top of nodes. So let's go back into simulator mode, but I'll show you how to do it. Extensions, InkStitch, visualize and import, simulator, that way. Okay? So you can see, that's all stitching just the way we need to. So I'm pretty satisfied with that. So let's go ahead and close that out. Let's go ahead and turn on our fill areas. And let's take one little sneak peek at the whole kit and caboodle here. So we'll go into Stitch Plan Preview. Okay, so that's what the whole design looks like together, all together. Looking pretty snazzy. I'm pretty satisfied with how all that looks. All right, So one last thing just to take a quick peek at. Let's go back into simulator mode, Control Alt S. I want to show you one more thing here. Not sure what happened there. I hit Shift Alt S. My bad. So there we go. So now we're back in simulator mode here, but this is the full simulation. What I wanted to show you was the total stitch count for the entire 3-inch design. It's 5,318 stitches. But what also I wanted to show you is when we come in here to the info tab, this is really what we want to see. So you see here it says 5 thread jumps, but it's showing no trims. And what is it considering a thread jump? Well, what it's considering, let's show you where they're at first of all. They're all right here at the end. So when it finishes, it's really considering these color changes also as a thread jump, which really aren't. They're just color changes. But when it finishes that top border, it's jumping to the eye. And because there's such a great distance between the eye and the mouth, it's jumping, right? And then it's jumping from the mouth to the other eye. So we have totally optimized this design to stitch out perfectly, minimal trims. Looks like we still have an issue here. I don't like that. So let's fix that. I don't know what that issue is, but there's still an ongoing issue here. I thought I took care of that, but maybe I didn't. Well, there's multiple nodes on top of there. So I did take care of it, but there was multiple nodes on top. See, there's still one there. Now there's no more. So now we should not get that. So let's take one more quick look before we go to print on this one. And yes, that satin is all taken care of. Everything is looking perfect on our little bumblebee. All right, so that's it. So you can see it's not that complicated, and yet it is a little bit complicated. But once you really understand all the moving pieces to it, it's really pretty straightforward. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you learned something. Thanks for watching.